Inside the Birds is back. Adam Caplan and Geoff Mosher, right? Adam, we are not just back because it's Monday morning, and we're not just back like a regular podcast because Eagles training camp begins this week. We're back for season 6. We turn the page from season 5 and we head to season 6 of Inside the Birds. Can you believe this is the start of our 6th season together? We've been through a ton, man.
I know. It was I just remember the spring of 2018. We're like, okay, podcasting. Okay. What are we doing here? Because I remember when it was me and Billy Osborne, former Eagles special teams player and a receiver out of University of Pittsburgh. And I called you. I said, hey, I'm doing this. I got this concept. Let's see if it works. What do you think? You said yes, of course. Billy dropped out for the first year. Mm-hmm. We were WIP. Were we WIP in the second year?
No, that was the part of the first year because we started in August of 2017, and by September, after a few pilot episodes,
August of 18.
I'm sorry, 2018. You're right. Yeah. No, because the Eagles won the Super Bowl in February of 2017. Did they not? Now I don't remember.
No.
Yeah, no, you're right. 18. You're right. Sorry, man. I'm getting old. More on that in a minute because I'll tell you in a second. But okay. Yeah, 2018, correct, is when we started up. So and yeah, we had that first year. By September, we were with WIP and kind of a merged deal with the podcast at the time. I think it was Go Birds. It still is now. They were helping us out. And then after a year, we went off on our own and now, starting 6 years later, we're just so much more than a podcast. So, and we do this every time we turn the page to season 6. We have a lot of people that are responsible for this besides you and I. You can't have a 6th season of a company, a digital sports media company, without a great listener base and a great audience. So a very loyal and faithful audience. So first and foremost, we got to thank our listeners, our viewers, our interactors, our people who subscribe to our mailing list, our Patreon members, everybody who's involved in consuming Inside the Birds. We are nothing without you, and you guys have been great. But then also our sponsors and business partners, who have been with us along the way. We are eternally grateful for them, and I'm really proud to say that they associate with us the way we associate with them. So big thanks to them. And I think we have to thank people who have come aboard ITB, like guys that are a big part of our programming, like Jason Avant and Greg Cosell and Quentin Michael and so many other people. Andrew DeCecco, right, who works for us and does a great job on the website and on podcasts, and anybody who's Trey Thomas, who's been a part of Inside the Birds, and we've got more coming, and we'll make some announcements, down the road.
One coming soon. Yeah.
John DiFilippo and Rick Spielman and all the great people who have joined on our platform before.
On Patreon.
Yeah, on Patreon. Sure. That's great. And then, the people who don't really get their name heard a lot, but are so important, is our interns. The people who work behind the scenes, whether they're current or past, we thank them if they're listening. Really appreciate all the work that they've done. And of course, our business manager, Josh Weinfeld, who is just tireless. So that's Inside the Birds right there. Everybody we just talked about. And I'm just really super proud that we can start 6th season. And we've made this a big part of our lives, man.
No doubt. In fact, I got to give Spike Eskin credit. It was 2019, I think. Yeah. Sometime in 2019, and he was running WIP then. He's running WFAN in New York. Mm-hmm. Guys, I think you really need to go out on your own.
Yeah.
And we don't need to go into the deep details, but he made a great point. He goes, he saw that we had something. He goes, you really need to go out on your own. You guys are good enough already to do it. I'm like, wow, okay, if he says so. 100%. But we'd argue, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember that he explained, a couple things about promotion. He goes, don't worry about Twitter, keep promoting it. He goes, if they're following you on Twitter, they want to know about what you're doing. I was like, okay, it's good feedback. And he's really smart.
He is.
He knows what he's doing. So, but moving this forward, yeah. So it's been certainly eye-opening, and it's funny when we would put polls out. Okay, guys, we're only doing a half an hour. Is that good? And overwhelmingly, people said, no, we want an hour. I'm like,
more.
Okay. No, okay, because we got the feedback. People explain what they wanted. They want to go inside the football team. They want to learn,
right?
And they want to be smarter football fans. That's the essence of what we do. That's exactly the reason why we came up with this concept. We
100%.
want to go inside football. Geoff and I love football. That's our first things. We actually love the game. And we bring this thing forward here, as you said, to our 6th season. Wow.
Yeah, crazy. So just really, again, really thankful for everybody involved and our great listeners. We have such great commenters and interactive fans and people who reach out to us all the time, and they need to know that means a lot to us. We see a lot of the comments, the emails, everything, good or bad. Constructive criticism, we're open to it. So we just appreciate that you listened and had an opinion on something. So we're excited for season 6, excited for this podcast, excited to welcome, by the way, some new members to our Patreon community. Taylor and Derek, they are going to love the content that we've already put up. Guys like, we mentioned it, John DiFilippo, who broke down the whole Sean Desai Fangio scheme for us amazingly, and how to attack it, and knowing Sean Desai and what he brings as a defensive coordinator. That was invaluable information. We'll have more down the road, like we do. We're going to do our tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we will do our Ask ITB live stream on Patreon. So look forward to do that. What time do we do that at? Is that 8 o'clock? Yeah.
Yep. 8 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, I'll have my usual chat. Right. And that'll be after the first day of practice, which is Wednesday.
Right.
Oh, and we can announce this right now. Rick Spielman, we want to get a GM who could set us up for what training camp looks like, the value of it, of training camp, joint practices. We want to get into, because Rick's an old schooler. What does he think? The Eagles have the shortest practice, and we're going to get into the Eagles practice schedule. It
got modified again.
I know. Look, I get it. I can't argue against it, because it works, right? It works.
Right.
But of the times we've had Rick on, we never brought up that the Eagles practice the least. And he's tight with Howie, so I'm very curious to what he's going to say on that. And I've got a whole stream of questions. I saw Rick at a golf tournament last week, Mid-Penn Banks in Hershey. Actually, Rick's group won. I have to ask Rick.
Good for him. Nice.
Yeah, they won. Yeah, he was in the early group with me. In fact, by the way, I played with Raleigh McKenzie, former Eagles guard.
Yes, and his twin brother,
Reggie.
They both were in front offices in the NFL at the same time at one point. When Reggie was the GM, I think, of the Raiders. I think Raleigh was with the Packers.
I'm not sure. I know he worked for him. Raleigh wasn't scouting, but anyway, we kind of knew each other anyway from seeing him in charity events. He's a wonderful guy, and it was great to talk about the old days. And I was right. I said 63 with a neck roll, and he goes, "Yep, you got it." Yeah, he goes, "You got a good memory." I said, "Yeah, I learned players by number," and yeah, he was there. He had Ray Rhodes, and I think the tail end of Kotite, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, as we get closer here. There's also a little news the Eagles made, although the contract hasn't been signed, but an old face is back after 7 years.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into that. So inside, because you know exactly why I can't wait to get into that signing, because of what the history behind that move. We'll get into that in a second. Of course, Inside the Birds is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort. They are the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. I spent some time over there over the weekend, Adam, and had a great time. So we and my wife and some friends, we all went to the I Love the 90s tour concert at Ocean Casino. So we had a blast there. Now, the funny thing is, at some point I realized most of the artists there were more popular in the 80s than the 90s.
Oh,
so it was kind of funny that they called. So it's headlined by Vanilla Ice, I'm ashamed to say. And he was not the best entertainer. I'll give you that.
Oh yeah, what's this? Robbie Van Winkle.
Robbie Van Winkle, right? Tone Loc. You remember Tone Loc?
Oh yeah, I just heard Funky Cold Medina like 2 days ago. Okay.
Yeah. Tone Loc, Rob Bass was there. CNC Music Factory. It was kind of just like a trip down memory lane. It was fun.
I love that one song. What's it called? It's really strong. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, I love that song. Yeah,
that was a banger back in the day. Yeah. So here's a funny thing. So we have an injury report to start off with right away on Inside the Birds. A football injury, and it is me who is appearing on the injury report. So I was down the shore over the weekend. This will be a quick story, but I think people are going to want to hear this. I was down the shore this weekend. It's a football related injury. I was playing a football catch with my nephew. He's 13 years old. And, like we're playing on the beach. So we throw some lead passes, things like that. And he threw me a pass that was pretty good. It was sort of coming at me, but really declining to like my waist area and leading me to my left arm, left shoulder. So I had to go low to get it a little bit, right? So I go low to get the ball, and then I'm my momentum's taking me to the ground. So I don't do a full out dive, but I land on the ground as I catch the ball. And I'm thinking I'm just gonna hit the sand and be fine. And while I hit the sand, my left elbow went up into my upper rib cage on my left side as my body, the rest of my body is coming down on it. And the weirdest thing happened, and now I sort of get it. You ever hear an athlete who tears his ACL say he hears the pop?
Oh no.
I didn't hear pop, I heard crunch. I felt and heard like a crunch and in my upper rib area, and I just kind of laid there on the sand on my knees and elbows for a good 2 minutes because I was A, in a lot of pain, and B, I was sort of afraid to move and make anything worse. Eventually I was able to get to my feet, but I did some damage there. What I think I've done is either have a slight rib fracture or a major rib bruise, contusion, something like that. But I'm still hurting today as people are listening to this. So I mean, I'm okay. I can move around. I ice it. I'm not going to go to a doctor. I'm not going to get an X-ray because if it's a slight fracture, what are they going to do? They're going to say, take it easy, relax, rest.
Take Tylenol.
Right. Yeah. The only treatment you would have if you needed like surgery for screws in place, but I'm not that bad. I mean, I can walk. It's just like I can't laugh. I can't lay on my left side too much. I mean, I'm in pretty significant pain most of the day, except for when I'm taking, ibuprofen and everything.
I tore my right upper deltoid, which is near the rotator cuff on my right shoulder from overuse of tennis. So I backed off for 5 weeks. Now it's great. I mean, I just, by not putting more wear and tear on it, just backing off.
Yeah.
It's what, I got massage therapy on it, and the guy said, listen, you really need to back off this. He wanted to go away. And I'm all right. I bit the bullet.
Right.
That was tough, but man, I've not had a rib injury. I've not, my years of being a non-athlete. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not fun. This is my first sort of real, I mean, I was pretty sore. It's tough to sleep on that side when or it's tough to laugh, honestly. Someone says something funny. Yeah. Because it's like your ribs. So you're filling it with air. You're just, it's always moving. But I'll be okay. I think, like you said, a couple of weeks, I gotta be easy and not do too much, but then I'll wind up being okay. But it's just a shame we have to start season 6 with me on the injury report. My Lord.
You're if it's not broken, it'd be more day to day. If you strain rib cartilage,
right,
common football injury, that hurts like crap, but you can play with it. But you're not going to get shot up to play. So
no Toradol for me.
Right.
All right, so let's get into some really good stuff here. So the Eagles bring back, as you alluded to, a familiar face, and it's kind of funny because on the last podcast, which came out before this, we were talking about sort of the need for the Eagles to still bring in some offensive line depth or at least kick some tires. We talked about DJ Fluker, right? And so the Eagles sign a familiar face in offensive tackle Dennis Kelly, who many people mostly remember not for playing for the Eagles, but for being traded right before the 2016 season for Dorial Green Beckham.
So that was 7 years ago. By the way, they haven't signed him yet. He's agreed to the deal, just to be clear. As of Sunday night, I got the league's transactions, and the contract was not finished yet. He has to pass the physical.
Right.
And I'm going to get into that. Here's the deal with, I talked to someone who was on a coaching staff with him earlier in the last couple of years. He's gone through, he's had a knee issue, a back issue. As a coaching source who was on one of those staff said, he was really beat up physically late in his tenure with the Titans, and he moved on to Green Bay and the Colts. So we'll see. I mean, he's got to pass a physical, but you're right. He really could potentially, if all goes well with this situation in August and September leading up, if he looks like he's got something left, you've got a backup right, left tackle. He's played both. I'm told pretty strongly he's way better off at right tackle. He's a power blocker. He's a big mauling type. He can play guard if you need him to, but he's better at right tackle than left. But again, he's played both. And he's 33 and a half years old. I mean, he's up there, man. You just don't know what he's got left. Now, the question would be, as we throw this back to you, what does this mean to Jack Driscoll if Driscoll does not win the right guard job?
Well, I sort of, I don't think they are agreeing to terms with Dennis Kelly planning to signing him because they think he's a real legitimate contender to start at right guard. I think
no, but I'm talking about no, but I'm saying what does this mean if Driscoll doesn't win the job? Now he's just a backup, and Kelly would be a backup. What does this mean for the roles?
I mean, just me speaking, and I'm not Jeff Stoutland or anything, but I would still think that Jack Driscoll's versatility, his youth. He's on the 4th year of a 4-year deal. Like, if this guy leaves in free agency and signs even a decent contract that helps him in the comp pick game, I think I'd be surprised if Dennis Kelly unseated Jack Driscoll for even a backup, especially because
we're not
Dennis is
talking about getting
33.
cut. I'm just talking about what does this mean for only the season, nothing else. What does this mean for is Kelly going to be the 6th offensive lineman, the top left tackle, right tackle? Driscoll be the top backup guard. See, that's where I'm going here.
Okay.
Yeah, and then plus Jurgens. I mean, Jurgens is only a guard center, and really, he'd be better off at center. But Jurgens obviously could still win the right guard job. So there's some moving parts here. It just depends on what Kelly is from a health standpoint.
Yeah, I don't want to call him a camp body. He's too experienced for that. But I don't know that he's going to be a real viable contender for the 53. Dennis Kelly. We'll see.
Right, and health at this point is number one for him to get through training camp and see where he's at. But if he does make the team, they'll see where they'll know by how he looks like in training camp. Is he ready to be that guy who could start in a pinch? Is he ready to start if needed? Because linemen rarely rotate. I know there've been a couple teams who've done it when they're not sure about who should be starting, but it's rare in today's NFL that you're going to rotate. So Kelly could be a play away from playing if he makes a team, as you're talking about. And obviously Driscoll is shown to be a pretty good backup.
Do you think that they view Dennis Kelly already as an upgrade over their other two veteran? What they have? Fred Johnson, right, who also is a right tackle mostly. And who's the Robinson, right?
Roderick Johnson.
Broderick Johnson, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like they view Dennis Kelly much differently because he's more experienced?
Yeah, exactly. Kelly's got way more experience. Now, again, you're worried about the wear and tear. He's got a lot of mileage on his body, and who knows what he has left. They're not going to know until they get through training camp. And quite frankly, when we're going to get in their practice schedule and how it works, the rules are in the acclimation period. They're not really going to know until there's real physical play. And they get through the dog days of August, that's when you get into the 90-degree weather. We know how humid it is at this time of year, and get through and see physically how he holds up. And we know the Eagles aren't going to practice a ton compared to the other teams, but hey, there's going to be physical play. You now could grab somebody, so we'll see how he holds up here.
We will. Now, Dennis Kelly has come a long way. I mean, like you said, he's been in the league for quite a while now. 10 years, I think he's played.
11. This would be
5, 6, 7, 8. This will be his 11th year. Correct. Oh. I remember his rookie year in 2012. He wound up starting 10 games, right, for a team that was not very good. Not intentionally. There were so many injuries on the offensive line, and he got himself in hot water because, and the kid's like a really, he's a kid then. Out of Purdue, like nice kid, not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but a Sports Illustrated reporter was doing a story on the Eagles and Michael Vick and the Eagles offense. And obviously things weren't going great for the Eagles at that time, but Dennis Kelly made some kind of remark about how the offense is different. It's not like, he said something like, it's not like we've got Peyton Manning back there, orchestrating the entire thing. And what he was he was trying to sort of compare the way that offense was run, where Peyton made all the calls, all the chat, like you did what Peyton Manning said. Sure. But with the Eagles, you really did, from an offensive line standpoint, the same thing that they're doing now, what Jason Kelce said and did, right? Because Jason Kelce in 2010 or 12 was his 3rd year, if I'm not mistaken. No, wait a minute.
That was his 2nd year, yeah.
That was his 2nd year. But the point he was just trying to make is they were running a totally different offense and a totally different scheme. And then it got sort of taken out of context that he was basically saying, well, Michael Vick isn't Peyton Manning.
Sure.
And it didn't, and he felt so bad about it because not only did it appear in the story, Adam, but they pulled the quote in a quote box in in the magazine and sort of just took it out of context. And I felt bad for the kid.
Yeah,
so, he apologized. He said he did not mean to make that comparison, but
he's actually a pretty quiet guy, generally. But so let's move this forward here. So Kelly was drafted 2012 under Andy Reid regime for their last year. Then he played in the Chip Kelly scheme, and then the first, technically it was the first year, but he was only there for their offseason. He got it was Doug's first year in 2016. He got traded. I happened to be there in training camp that day. It's so bizarre. So here, let me give you a little background very quickly, and we're going to move on. So I'm there, and I'm asking someone on the personnel staff, the Titans, why is Dorial Green Beckham your 2nd-round pick last year? Why is he running with the 4th team? Because he's just not processing well. He's given specific responsibilities and he's not carrying out them well, and the coaches didn't trust him. And who knew an hour and a half later he'd be traded to the Eagles. I was like, well, and I see the guy coming off the field later on, and he goes, "Did I not tell you?" I'm like, "Wow, okay." I wish he would have told me that he was going to be traded.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Even give you like a little hint, like,
right,
oh,
exactly.
stay tuned, something might happen there. You know, that would have been nice.
But I'll admit it though, I thought the Eagles got a steal only because he was a second rounder, and Dennis Kelly's sort of like a mauling offensive lineman, and
yeah,
who knew? 7 years later, he's an Eagle. That's crazy.
Yeah, we've talked about this. I knew the Eagles were not getting a steal. I was pretty outspoken about it. I thought the trade made sense. You needed some wide receiver help. I just thought the plan was dubious at best. Like, oh, we're just going to start Dorial Green Beckham, and he's going to do well for us when he was a mess for like not only the Titans but even in college. Like, what made the Eagles so smart think that they were just going to put Dorial Green Beckham on the field and all of the problems are going to go away? I thought that was a little bit too much arrogance on there, but they should have made him like a fourth or fifth guy and had to make him understand what it's like to work to get on the field. But no, they started him right away and just enabled him like everybody else did.
Do you remember what Doug said? And he knew. He said, we're going to bring him along slowly because it was he just had trouble processing what he was being given. They knew about this.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the scouting report coming out of whatever school he went to, and it never worked. In fact, I'm pretty certain he never played for another team after that.
He did not. And in fact, my favorite stat now is that Dennis Kelly has more touchdown catches in the last 6 years than Dorial Green Beckham, because Dennis Kelly had one 3 years ago and Dorial Green Beckham hadn't had one since 2016. So
oh my goodness gracious!
I know. Yeah. And in fact, how many touchdowns career? Dorial Green Beckham has 6 touchdowns in his career, right? And Dennis Kelly has 1, so he's not that far behind if you can get him a few more. But yeah, no, didn't work out. Didn't work out. But so we move on. So we'll see how Dennis Kelly does. We'll see what that means for Jack Driscoll and the rest. So you mentioned this. I want to talk about training camp structure because I was yet again a little taken aback by seeing some of the early training camp schedule, because we've already discussed that they're shorter, they do less, they're not in pads as much, you know, the hours are shorter, even the drills sometimes are a little less laboring. Like, you never see an Oklahoma drill even when they are in pads. You just don't see.
Well, that's outlawed, just so you know, that you can't do it.
No, that's a good point. I should. You don't really see too much contact even in the padded drills. A lot of teams have scaled back on that, but you know, you made a point that I thought was unbelievable. For the first 8 days of training camp, they do not have practice back-to-back days. Adam, I remember when there would be like a day off every 3 or 4 days, and we thought, wow, that's pretty interesting, right? There used to be never that. Now it's a day off every other day.
When the Eagles sent it over the weekend, you know, because I'm trying to make my schedule out, you know, through mid-August.
Right.
So I want to get there. I'm going to be there this Friday, right now, as of Monday morning. I should be there Friday. Okay, practice Wednesday, walkthrough. And they have a speed walkthrough. I get that, but it's not a real practice. Friday practice, Saturday day off. Sunday practice, Monday day off. Tuesday practice, Wednesday day off. Thursday and Friday are the first back-to-back days. Of course, Saturday they have to have a walkthrough because they had to have 2 back-to-back. It's crazy. Look, but I'm not arguing. It works. All good to them. I kind of threw up the white flag a couple years ago when you and I were there. I think it was the first real. It might have been like 47 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "What the hell is this? Why did it even come down?" But okay. But here's the thing: it works for them. They, knock on wood, for their sake, they have one of the best injury rates in the National Football League. It's based on, by the way, doing this kind of practices on sports science, and also their injury advisor Arch Denoda, who's really good, who I think came from University of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Look, success, keep doing it, man. Whatever works. You know, I would say the detractors, once the Eagles have issues with whatever, or being not so much injury, if they're not sharp to start the season, people say, see, they didn't practice enough. But hey, it worked for them.
So I agree with you. I do want to go back. I think it works from a health standpoint. I do think there is some evidence, though, that it can hurt them from a non-health standpoint, from a strategical standpoint. If you go back 2 years ago, Jonathan Gannon's first year as defensive coordinator, and Sean Desai is going to face this same thing, right? First year as a coordinator, you're working with new personnel. For the first 4 or 5 games of the year that year, Gannon was only playing either base or nickel. And you remember that Kansas City game where they just put Tyreek Hill in the slot And Gannon had no dime package to match it up with. Not because he didn't have enough defensive backs. He just didn't have a dime package. He even said, we don't have a dime package yet. And it's not because you lack defensive backs. Everybody keeps the same number of defensive backs. He just wasn't sure who was yet suited to be that, like who he's going to put on the field on a dime, right? And I would think that if you had more time to learn about your players as a new coordinator, more practices, then you might feel more comfortable being able to implement certain packages. And now you're going fast forward 3 years down the road or two, and Sean Desai takes over, and he's got new personnel. Many of these guys he's never coached before, whether they're Eagles holdovers or just new guys like Terrell Edmonds, right? And you can do a lot in the classroom, but you really need to see it on the field. And he's just not going to have the same amount of time that, say, a Jim Johnson or a Sean McDermott would have had, 10 years ago. And I think that can impact how confident you feel in learning and knowing your personnel.
And that's going to be our next segment. But before we do that, that is a problem, because think about it. They only had 6 OTA practices. They didn't have a mandatory camp.
Right.
And we know for a fact the veterans practice very little, if at all. And look, I get it. This gets them to train. Their whole deal is don't get anyone hurt. Totally get that. But it's a great point you make, because you've got 2 new coordinators. You've got a bunch of coaches. This is our next segment that we'll get to in a minute. And a coach from another team actually brought this up to me. That's why I wanted this is a big issue. He said, Philly's got a lot of coaching changes. And I go, yeah, you're right. And I was driving when I was talking to this coach, and I was like, I need to look this up. I mean, we talked about it when it happened, but because there was no practices, in March, because remember the Eagles, they were the last staff to finish. They were the last coaching staff to fill.
Right.
And a lot of changes. And that you got to see how you can't just snap your fingers. Oh, everything's going to be the same. Everything's going to look right. And they're going to be a Super Bowl team. Not so fast. You have to see how these guys work. And when some of these guys came from the college level, it takes time to develop this thing.
It does. It takes time. And obviously the Eagles have decided to, give up some of the time for the sake of better health. So, and listen, I think you make a great point on the whole give and take of that. It's just as important to have better health as it is to have an understanding of your players and your scheme, because you can't execute anything if your players aren't available to do it. Right. So they work hand in hand. I just always wonder, at some point, like there's got to be a line that you cross, right? We can keep saying year after year, if they stay healthy, this has worked, this has worked, this has worked, to the point where what if they just stop practicing altogether? Remember how I asked you on a recent podcast, I said, in 10 years, do you think training camp practices are even going to be a thing? And you said, well, how would you not? I said, I could see a day where they're all walkthroughs. And after we talked about it, you almost sort of like, I saw the wheels moving in your head, and it feels like we're getting toward that.
Look, the Eagles practice at least, and again, can't blame them because it works, so why criticize it? But
right,
and they're going to have 2 sets of joint practices. They'll have 2 practices with the Browns, 1 with the Colts, and now not every team. See, the problem with that is not every team. I know Andy Reid doesn't like doing them. Pete Carroll doesn't like doing them. Some teams just won't do them. They don't like doing them. But a lot of them do now. In fact, into the 20s will. 20 it might be 22 teams of the 32 are going to work with each other.
Right.
It's a thing now. It's been going on for years, but not to this degree.
Right.
But again, you just have to. Every coach decides what worked for him, and with Sirianni now, it wasn't like this with Indy, but it's Sirianni's call in the end. It's really his call, but to his credit, he does what he thinks is best. Look, him giving up play calling in the middle of his first season is unheard of.
Absolutely. And
it was a great decision. Then to decide we're not going to throw the ball anymore, we become a running team because our quarterback isn't ready for it. Like, who does that? That shows a lot of willingness to listen, and that was brilliant by him. And it's a big reason why they've been so good under his leadership.
Absolutely. He did make a great decision, and he's made a lot of good decisions. So he gets the benefit of the doubt, and we'll talk about the coaching staff in a second. I'll tell you another great decision. A great decision would be to go Ocean Casino Resort this summer down in Atlantic City. It's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday, and they can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over 5 million in gifts and prizes. So be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. Folks, let me just tell you, firsthand experience, go to Ocean Casino. It's
amazing place.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
They've made it unbelievable time. There are so many things to do. Even if you're not like, you don't like to gamble that much, their restaurants are amazing. They have a Top Golf there. They've got fantastic places to eat that are like not restaurants, but little places to stop. Great store shops, great concerts and entertainment. It's really an awesome place. I would highly recommend it.
I do. I love it. Yeah, it's huge. It's
enormous.
Biggest casino I've seen in Jersey or Pennsylvania. I mean, it rivals any Vegas casino. So check them out. Their 5th anniversary, very cool, and we look forward to continuing our relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're talking about coaching and how different things are going to look because there's not only new personnel, but there's a bunch of promotions, additions, hires, and people in different spots. You know, obviously the spotlight, Adam, is on Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. Brian now becomes a offensive coordinator. He becomes a play caller, as Nick Sirianni said he would be, for the first time in his NFL career. I believe he did it at Florida. But this is now the first time in the pros. And Sean Desai, who is going to be a defensive coordinator for the second time and a play caller for the second time, but obviously his first with the Philadelphia Eagles and with a lot of the players. Now, I'm trying to think, even though I don't think Nick Morrow did not play for him years ago in Chicago because Nick was still in Oakland, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. You're correct. Yes.
So I don't know that Sean has a history with any of these. Did they sign anybody from Seattle last year? I don't think so, right?
No. Yeah, Sean was Morrow was only with the Bears last season. Yeah.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. And you know, well, let's go to his side first. Like with Desai, play callings that aren't not, as we've said now for well over a year, not every, in fact, it goes with offensive defense coordinators. They don't call the game exactly the same way as their predecessor or the guy's scheme that he's going to run. So Desai won't call exactly like it, like Fangio would. Or like Gannon would. They're running Fangio, as we talked about back in whenever he was hired in February. But it's just, how will he run it? Now, he has to get, as you were saying earlier, he's got to get used to the personnel. And he's got a lot of, we're going to get into the new coaches he's got on defense. My goodness gracious, they've got a lot of new coaches, which talk about in about 2 minutes from now. But how he calls it compared to Gannon, it's going to be interesting because, again, when you run Fangio, I've talked to a lot of coaches. John D. Filippo told us this on our Patreon interview with him for Chalk Talk last month. He said, "Listen, when you run Fangio," and other offensive coaches told me this, visually, you know they're not going to blitz, they're not going to sacrifice coverage, they're going to disguise post snap and pre snap. And what D. Filippo said was a great point. He goes, they're gonna make you earn your points. It could be a 10-play drive. It's rare to give up what are called X plays, those big time passing plays downfield. And now when you do, you get fired, like Ed Donatel did. Ed Donatel with the Vikings, they were terrible in the back end. But now that Brian Flores is in there, but getting back here, it worked here. They didn't give up a lot of big plays. Their thing was to keep it in front of them. And we're going to see what Desai does here. We don't know. There's no way to know about when he's going to call blitzes or pre-snap and post-snap. We know for a fact he did with Chicago, but we'll learn quickly exactly how it's going to look. And when I go to these camps, I know you do the same thing. The first thing I look at when there's a new coordinator is the difference between if they're going to run the same scheme is, okay, they did a lot of 5-1 the last 2 years. Are they going to do as much 5-1? Are they going to do more 5-2? You know, how are they going to do that? Because the Eagles, every game last year, they started off with 3 defensive tackles. Is that going to change? We'll see.
Right. By the way, just hearing you say running Fangio makes me realize how ubiquitous the Fangio defense is in the NFL now. He's achieved like the rarefied air. Like it used to just be offensive systems. Like you could run Air Coryell or you would run Earhart Perkins. Right. And so now you run Fangio. Like that's pretty amazing.
It is. I mean, we don't have time to do it, but I'd love to. Maybe I'll do it in the future. See how many teams are running it.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are running, and when I first started covering the league, most teams ran at 43. A lot of teams are running hybrid 34. Some are running the Belichick disciples, like Brian Flores and others are running, the hybrid 30. Patrick Graham, if he gets the right player, certainly will run that. With the Raiders, he just has not had a lot of talent on the back end. And yeah, that's the other thing, by the way, before we move on here and talk about the new coaches and how these guys are going to be used and so forth. You coach to the talent that you're given.
Yes.
And the good thing is the Eagles, though they've lost 5 starters, they've done a good job, at least on paper, of replacing those guys. But we'll see. We'll see. You coach to the limitations or the strengths of your roster.
Yeah, and just to recap, because I don't know if people realize just how much turnover on the defensive coaching staff, but you've got now Matt Patricia as the senior defensive assistant. All right, he kind of steps into the role Fangio sort of had, because Fangio was a senior assistant for the Eagles last year. He was doing a lot of different things. Marcus Brady is now a senior offensive assistant, so he was working with the defense last year. Came over from the Colts after they had their whatever, they made their coaching changes, and then he worked as a defensive assistant, even though he's an offensive guy. But now he moves to offensive assistant, and then you've got the new linebackers coach DJ Elliott to replace Nick Rallis. You have Ronell Williams. You have the 3-headed secondary coach, right? You got Ronell Williams as the nickelbacks coach, Taver Johnson as the assistant DBs coach, and the new DBs coach is DK McDonald, right?
Correct. Right. So you got this. By the way, we can tell you with Fangio, what we're told was he worked a lot with Jeff Stoutland, which is interesting. Maybe blocking, maybe trying to figure out whenever he was working, whenever he was with the Eagles. We do know from talking to people around the league that know what was going on, that he was helping Geoff. Now, basically, if you're going to help Stoutland, who's brilliant, they're going to talk about obviously how defense are trying to break down his blocking scheme.
Right.
So now Patricia is a senior defense assistant here. He'll be mostly on the defensive side of the football. From what we've heard, he's actually kind of like he's getting along with, he's talks to a lot of the coaches and he has his own ideas. He's not throwing it on them. He just talks about, hey, here are the kind of things we've done here and there, and they may wind up doing these things. Who knows? But he's a smart guy. You could talk about how badly his tenure was with Detroit, and it certainly was. But this guy's a Super Bowl winner multiple times, and he's a pretty smart defensive mind. He was a D coordinator in 2017 when he played the Eagles. We get it. Eagles smoked him with Nick Foles, who knew, but he's a smart guy, and why not pick his brain? It's a smart move.
That is correct. But again, it really highlights how much turnover on that defensive staff. There's gonna be a lot of. I like Sean Desai. I feel for him because I think he's walking into a difficult situation with that much turnover among the players, that much turnover on the staff, and coming off a year where the team went to the Super Bowl, but is still expected to be very competitive. So he's got a lot of expectation. And plus the way he got the job over a really popular assistant coach in Denard Wilson just adds to sort of the cloud around it. Like, you got to do a good job here, because all these other factors are going to come into play.
And now he may, because of his Temple connections, he may know, because the Eagles have a bunch of guys on the defensive staff who either coached at Temple recently or years ago. So it's kind of weird, the connections with Temple's football program. But yeah, you mentioned Marcus Brady. He was offensive consultant last season. He'll be senior offensive assistant. The cool thing is he's been a coordinator. I know Frank Reich called the place, but he's been a coordinator. He's been a quarterbacks coach, a really good one, I'm told, by coaches who work with him in Indy. He's really good. Ronell Williams, as you mentioned, the Nichols coach, they've never had a Nichols coach before. That's really interesting. Taver Johnson, who's also with Temple, just a DB's coach. Mike D'Angelo is a new coach, defensive quality control. And then you mentioned Brian Johnson's promotion. Alex Tanney, by the way, this is only his 3rd year coaching. He's going from assistant QBs / offensive assistant to the quarterbacks coach in his 3rd year. DK McDonald was their assistant DB's coach and to DB's coach. Apparently he's a really good coach. I'm talking to people who know him, who worked around him, been around him over the couple of decades he's coached. So we'll see. As you said, you make a really fair point. You just don't know. Some of these guys came in from the college ranks. You just don't know about how they're gonna work here. A lot of new faces in new places. So we'll see how it works out.
I think the biggest thing, Adam, when we're at practices, what I'll be looking for, I'm going to try to pay attention more so to these assistant coaches now than I have in the past. And I want to see what kind of presence they have when they're coaching. I think one of the first things that alerted us to the fact that Nick Sirianni had some presence as a coach was that we saw him coaching his players and coaching his coaches in that first training camp. He was not afraid to stop a play and go through what a guy did right or did wrong. He was not afraid. Even last year with Kenneth Gainwell, really kind of getting in on him when he was making some mistakes. We have seen Nick Sirianni coach his players and coaches. I've seen that. I saw that at Denard Wilson. I thought as a defensive backs coach, he had a presence. His team, his players respected him. You could see him coaching. Yep. Some of the things I heard about some of these guys is that they are. I've never heard a bad thing about anybody that they've hired or brought in, but I hear a lot of this guy's smart, but he's a little quiet. We'll have to see if these guys if they're quiet by nature, do they come out of their shell a little bit more because now they're either a coordinator or a position coach, or are they coaching their coaches? Are they coaching their players? You want to see that same kind of presence, for lack of a better word. And Sean decided to use the word palpable, right? I think that's not just the defense, but you want your coaching staff to be felt and be palpable for the players.
Sure, and that with Brian Johnson now, because he's obviously very close to Jalen Hurts. They've known each other for several years. Can he, when he needs to, can he get on him? I mean, is he willing to do that? Can he do that? I don't know. We can't answer that. But what we are told is Jalen's very hard on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Sirianni's talked about that. Hurts wants to be coached hard, which is great. I mean, his predecessor, he would take it from DiFilippo, and he would respond to it, but after DiFilippo left, it was a disaster. So, but Hurts is self-critical, which is awesome to hear from people we've spoken with who would know.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that goes. But you make a good point. You just don't know how this is going to work. A lot of turnover, and I'm not saying it's going to be a negative, but it could be. Number one, we don't know, and this is what doomed Andy Reid. All those coaching changes, and Andy had a Rolodex of coaches, but he kept losing them. Guys would become coordinators elsewhere, or they become head coaches. It can only do so much, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. We're going to get into some of the battles and some intel that we can share on some of these position battles that are going to go into camp. First, want to remind everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience. Their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. We're going to pause to hear from some other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal.
And
go ahead.
I just want to say we want to thank them for their patronage for, they've been there from the beginning. Brett Schulder and his group. And as I've said many times, if you check the reviews of thousands, it's hard to find a negative one. It's incredible, the satisfaction that people get. So many players, by the way, Marcus Peters, formerly of the Ravens, who might be signing with the Raiders soon. Who knows? I know he's going to work out for them. Boy, they're hurting a corner. They need him. He's a veteran. Yeah. Marcus Peters, and I know Fletcher Cox got cars from there. Several. I know Sixers have gotten players have gotten cars there. So they do a phenomenal job, and they're in Westchester, right off of 202.
Love them. Really appreciate them. If you're not doing some type of business with them, if you haven't even called, if you had a car to sell or a car to buy, you're making a mistake. At least pick up the phone or hop in there to their Westchester headquarters. All right, let us talk about some of the position battles. The one that we've been constantly harping on, and I think that it's going to be I don't know if I remember a stockpile of talent like this at a position before. Even the dream team, that was spread out. But running back, Adam, for the Eagles is by far, in a way, going to be the one. I think that the competition has the most eyes on it from the public because of the nature of the position in camp. Who's going to be the lead back? Who is going to be a situational back? Are they going to split? Is it going to be a true committee where it might be 33, 33, 33? I don't know how it's going to go.
Well, here's the thing. The coaches always have an idea of the way they think it'll go, but they're not going to know in this case until they get there. Why? You've got Rashad Penny, who's new.
Mm-hmm.
You've got DeAndre Swift, who they acquired in a trade for a 2025 fourth round pick. So they know what they're capable of doing. They know that clearly Penny's the most talented back on the roster. That doesn't mean he'll be their starter. And but starter may not mean that quite like you think it does. It may only mean 12 carries. It might mean 8 to 10 per game for Penny or Swift. And then third down or passing down. That could be Swift or Gainwell. Goal line. We know Gainwell's been effective goal line back. Do they even have one? Then every team has this. They have a set 2-minute or 4-minute hurry up back. Gainwell's been that guy. Now, does Swift do that because he's a dynamic pass catcher? They're going to get through this because the two new guys, they have to get used to these guys. They have to figure out what they're capable of handling. Obviously, they saw this in OTAs because OTAs are only passing, really. And so their passing drills are 7-on-7 mostly. So they'll get an idea now going forward of how they handle this stuff mentally and how they want to call games. It's fascinating because without Sanders, who was clearly their lead back for years, they may not have that guy. Who knows? It may, as you said, it might be the dreaded running back by committee, RBBC. Yeah, we don't know that. They'll figure that out. Again, coaches always have a general idea, but they're not going to know for sure at this point because they have not. None of these guys have been hit. They haven't had speed practices yet. They got to get used to these guys on the field.
Yeah, you made a great point about how a starter doesn't necessarily mean you get the first carry of a game. It doesn't. Sometimes you're the starter, but you don't get the most carries because of how the game goes. I think about the 2017 Super Bowl team, 2018 Super Bowl 17 season, after they acquired Jay Ajayi and then worked him into the rotation. He became the starter because to me he got the most carries between the 20s at that point, and then they would use Blunt on the short yardage situation, goal line. They would give him like second string between the 20s carries. And then clearly Corey Clement was the third down back. He was your guy who was going to catch passes, and he became so instrumental in that Super Bowl. It's still amazing what he did. But that was the deal. But like you said, like there were a couple of games I'm sure where Blunt or Clement might have gotten the first carry just because of the package they were coming out in. But I always saw it as Ajayi's your between the 20s guy. Then they turned Blunt into the grinder, fourth quarter, goal line, short yardage, and then Corey Clement was their passing yardage, passing down, third down back.
Oh, he was what he did in the Super Bowl.
Crazy.
I just what a season. He's kind of like a one-hit wonder, unfortunately, because of injuries. He's still hanging in there. He's been with a bunch of teams, but no, you're right. So to move on to we'll move on to the second battle. We're basically just ranking these. It's clear that it's a big deal. Because they could basically make these they could make all these specialist roles. A starter, again, not in the normal way, passing down, goal line, hurry up, 2-minute, 4-minute. It could all be specialized. We'll have to see. I mean, the training camp's going to be fun because, as we said months ago, this is the first time in several years they're going to have a lot of jobs or roles open.
Right. Absolutely. And then one of them, obviously, a starting job at right guard. You can say it'll be the second most watched battle, but it might be the most important battle of camp to see who's going to start right guard. And how would you handicap it going into the start of camp here?
Steen would be the favorite, but
slight favorite, right?
Yeah, I see. The thing is someone said to me last week, he goes, you got to be careful of just saying that Steen's a lock because he needs to learn the techniques of playing inside. He's never played this position before, right guard, or inside at all. Right. In a left tackle. We know he's got short arms. That's why he's playing inside. So Jurgens I know he's raw and inexperienced on the offensive line, but he has the 1 year experience of learning what Stoutland wants in terms of hand technique and your first step and all that. So that's going to be a little different for Steen. So it's not a lock. He clearly is the guy they want to win it. It's not a lock, and of course you've Jack Driscoll, who's the veteran of the group. He's on the final of his rookie contract. So, Look, you're right. If you want to say it's the number one battle, I got no problem with it. Running back or right guard are clearly the top two. So this is the big one, and as I said on the last show, the worst thing that could happen is if you have to use slide protection, because if you're sliding your protection to that side to help the guy out, that means you're vulnerable in another area. So you really don't want to do that if you can avoid it.
Don't you also see how it might be tricky for them to give Jurgens an honest fight against Steen? Because I can see Jurgens again having to play a lot of first team center with all the maintenance days that Jason Kelsey's going to get. And, like last year he had a surgery. That's different. But I think he's still, you're not going to see there's no reason to put Jason Kelsey out there, every day and let him go. You know what you got in Jason Kelsey. So I have a feeling you're going to see a lot of Cam Jurgens as the first team center just to get him ready and prepared for that.
Yeah, I get it, because Cameron Tom's the other center on the team, who was sort of a young journeyman, been around for a while, with the Saints for many years, the Dolphins, and then the Eagles, on and off their practice squad. So that'll be interesting to see what they do. Do they get Jurgens? Do they cross use him in practice? Do they have him take snaps at right guard and center? We'll have to see. Because again, I know Jurgens filled in for Kelsey and OTAs. That doesn't matter, because Kelsey wasn't really working a lot. What matters is in training camp. As coaches always tell me, it's almost like OTAs didn't matter. You could talk about, oh, this is great that they did this. It doesn't matter once you get to training camp. It's like because now the real physical play comes out, and now the battles come out. Now, I'm looking forward to seeing this. It's going to be an interesting situation.
Yeah. Now, maybe the position with the most interest from top to bottom would be safety as we move on to that, because it is literally grab bag, right? I mean, I think we all expect that Terrell Edmonds is going to wind up as a starter because of just on experience alone, former first-round pick. He's played steadily throughout. It's not like he's a bust. He just hasn't been great. He's been a good to average to safety, right? But I mean, between him and Sidney Brown and Reed Blankenship, and I guess you still have Kayvon Wallace there in the mix, and Justin Evans, who's a big wild card because he's very talented and very athletic, but he's always injured too. It sort of becomes like who's going to emerge from this situation here.
On your point, I'm not ruling out anything, because Terrell Edmonds is a very average player. He's not a playmaker.
Right.
He's lightweight speed, first round pick. That's why he's no longer a Steeler. He just never became the player they thought he was. He's a super high character guy. That's great, but you got to do it on the field. Sidney Brown is a force in the box. He's going to have to learn how to play back. It's not going to be easy. Eagles will play, from what I understand, probably a lot of split safety like they did under Gannon. Reed Blankenship is really smart. He does two things well, we're told. His first step is almost always right. He knows what he's looking at, but he lacks the foot speed that you want as a starting safety. So you're right. It's kind of like, let's say, 5 guys competing for 2 starting jobs, and then we'll see who the top backup would be. But I'm not ruling anything out here. Yeah. Right now, Edmonds and Blankenship would be your projected starters as of now, but that doesn't matter until they really get into practice and so forth. So again, whatever happened OTAs, you could throw that out. What matters is what happens in training camp, and it's wide open, man. It's just not ideal, but we'll see what happens.
Do you get the feeling, based on when you talk to NFL personnel people, that the fan hype train for Sidney Brown is a little bit different than that maybe the NFL personnel folk hype train for Sidney Brown?
Yes. Well, you love the kid.
Right.
You love with the spirit that he plays with. As one scouting source said, you love to have him in your foxhole, because he's going to get after it. He's tough. He's smart, high character. That's great. That's half the battle or more. But the other part is the football part, where he's got to make plays on the ball. He's got to learn how to play differently than he did at Illinois. So this is a work in progress. Let's see what happens. That the safety position is one. You're right, man. It is totally up in the air. I'm not ruling anything out here. You never know what's going to happen.
All right, let's move on to the next big competition. I'm probably going to pay more attention to this than I have in any other camp, and that's the punting competition. I might even bring out the timer, like some beat reporters do the hang timer thing. I'll just take the cell phone out and find the timer and start clocking the hang time on the punts between Tyler Zettner, the rookie free agent from Kansas State, and the incumbent Aaron Sipos.
Yeah, so Sipos, from what we understand, it's dead even. See, one thing we have to understand is it's not about how far you punt the football. It's about putting it where it's supposed to be, letting coverage get down there. So there's some technical parts that Sipos has to be better with. And Zettner is a punter / kicker. He's going to be clearly a punter here. We'll see what happens. You're right, man. I look forward late this week watching these guys. I typically don't look at the punters much at all when I travel to these camps, but you're right, man. This is actually we're ranking this 4th. It's a really important battle because field position was not up to standard. It wasn't with the punting job. And Brett Kern, I don't blame the Eagles for this one. Who knew he had a dead punting leg? He was toast when they didn't know that. Now, I don't think they worked him out. I'm pretty certain they didn't. maybe that was a mistake in hindsight, because we know he worked out for the Cardinals. We're talking to someone who would know. He actually did pretty well with his workout last September. But when the Eagles got him, you could see steadily, this is not as good. And then it really fell off. So, yeah, this job's wide open. We'll see what happens.
So if it's dead even by the end of camp, don't you think that favors Zentner? Higher upside, younger, like wouldn't you go with that guy? More versatile, can kick.
It depends. You'd have to define that a little clearer. Okay, well, what does Zentner?
I just mean if they're not really that distinguishable, they both clock the same average hang time. They're both, hold the ball well, and like, wouldn't you just naturally go with someone who's you think is younger, and therefore, if you coach him for a year, he can at least get to another level. Whereas I've coached Aaron Sipos now for 2-3 years, and this is he's maxed out. We're not getting him any better than this.
Possibly. It also would depend on money. Now, we'll try to see in the 3-year rookie free agent deal if they gave him any guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they did, but the fact of the matter is, when you look at this situation, it just simply was not good enough. I got to give their special teams crew credit. Boy, did they fix and correct and got Jake Elliott back to where he was many years ago. Boy, it did not end well on with Peterson and their group. They did a makeover on Jake Elliott, and he's been terrific the last couple of years. But Sipos has not been up and down. I get it. Former was he a rugby guy?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, another Australian guy.
Yep. And you're right. You make a fair point. He turns 31 in November.
Mm-hmm.
It just has to be better. So we'll see. Totally wide open.
All right, and the last one that we're going to talk about, I don't know that it's a job competition in that, there's going to be a winner and a loser, because I think both of these guys are going to wind up on the field in different roles. But obviously, more so last year, you knew Quez Watkins was a slot receiver and Zach Pascal would be used situationally, when they needed something. This year with Olamide Zaccheaus, I finally pronounced it right, brought to the mix, and the experience that he has and the shorthandedness he has, it's just a question of who they decide they want more in the slot, or is Quez Watkins better used as an outside receiver anyway? I think they're still going to look at Quez in the slot and see what they're getting and see if he's improved there. But I don't see it as like the same way like Steen versus Juergens. I see it as two guys that you're just trying to find the best usage for.
Yeah, to me, again, there was one of the few mistakes that Sirianni's made over his career here. He's been obviously been terrific, but Quez Watkins is not your possession receiver on third down that you need. You need the Jason Avant type who can make the catch. You don't have to be 215 pounds. You just have to make a tough catch in a short area. When they need a first down, you got to be able to make that catch. And the good thing about Zaccheaus is he's played the Z position. He's played the slot position. He knows what it's like to make a tough catch. The guy's been a starter, by the way, starting outside receiver as a Z receiver.
Yeah,
he can do that. Guy's made a lot of good catches in his career, and he also could play a vertical slot like Watkins. So we'll see. As you said, we'll see because man, Sirianni's really talked up Watkins. We know he loves him. I mean, he had that crazy quote which we laughed at, and turned out to be definitely was crazy. Watkins could be his best number 2 receiver he ever had. That was before they came close to signing Allen Robinson, before they almost traded for Calvin Ridley. Who else am I missing here?
There was another wide receiver in there Christian Kirk. They had some interest in, right? They were just not going to pay that kind of money.
Yeah, they were never really in it. They just, They looked into it, but because they just.
I don't think anybody was in it other than Jacksonville.
No, I know.
That money.
He's good. He's good as a slot. But anyway,
right.
So look, it'll play itself out. There's no doubt about it. It's going to play itself out. I look forward to that one because, man, if they could get a really nice, and by the way, Devontae Smith could play. I mean, he can line up inside. He's not just a Z. Right. But you like to have that guy when they go to their 11 personnel, Smith, Brown. You like to have that guy with you got the 2 outside receivers like Zaccheaus, make that third down catch or whatever. It could be 2nd and 15. If they're going to go 11 personnel, you like to have that guy like Zaccheaus do that.
100%. Excellent. All right, you're about to start your training camp tour, so you'll be doing the Eagles and other teams, and we'll get your observations along the way. We're going to try to catch some practices once as Eagles camp starts, and that we'll probably have some observations by the next podcast. So I look forward to that as well. And it's going to be a fun second half of the summer. I can't wait. I'm excited. Season 6 is here, and we're both ready to rock. You've been listening to Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.